the numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host and managing editor of Zoics Online, Bob Zerl. With me in Deadbug Studios is
Coach Nez.
Visit us at zoicsonline.com, zpnetwork.com, Facebook of the Nothing Shocking podcast community fan page, and the Quad Cities Rock and Roll Junkies interest group. Our Twitter handle is NoShockPod. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, all your other podcatchers. Please subscribe to the show, rate and review the show. We're on Rock Rage Radio, Sundays at noon Central Time. Our sponsors are
Ragged Records, Davenport, Iowa, and Rock Island, Illinois, new and used. We have Legends Guitar Picks out of Milan, Illinois, and RockstarPicks.rocks out of Queens, New York. And
thank you to the band Hong Kong Sleepover for letting us use their music. Check them out on iTunes or HongKongSleepover.com. I think that's their website. Mm-hmm. Our guest this week is Sin Quirin,
lead guitarist of Ministry. They're going out on tour here November 21st to December 21st, 1 month exactly.
Right. Yeah, he was a fun guy to talk to. He answered our questions really quick, but we still got a solid interview out of him.
40 minutes nice. For sure, yeah.
I don't know. It's always fun to talk to those guys that just I don't even know where I'm going with that, but I really enjoyed the conversation. We just finished it, so we're doing this intro right afterwards, which we normally don't do. So it's really fresh in my mind, and I don't know. How did you enjoy it?
You know, it just never amazes me for some reason, the industrial rock guys that we have come on the podcast. They're very informative, very laid back. You know, their music is very aggressive and in your face, but their interview as the person they are is very laid back and very conversational.
They're guys that have never really had to chase popularity, you know, and that's what I feel like a lot of kids, when they're coming into the industry, that's kind of your first, you know, how do I become, I guess the first thing you want to do is make something you like, but then you want to make that popular. And these guys haven't really, their whole lives, they've found this niche and they had success in that niche, and they've been able to just not worry about success. Success isn't the right word, popularity. And it's pretty cool. And we do dig into that in this interview a little bit. And it just seems like that's the kind of guys that these guys are. And it's beyond industrial. It really is more of it's a mindset where you can just do what you want and let the art come first and the success will follow. And popularity is neither here nor there.
You know, and it's so strange to me. Industrial rock, metal is such an aggressive force or aggressive sound, or both together if you want. You would think that the artists that perform this aggression would be very aggressive type people. And the artists that we've had on, this is number 3 or 4, I think, right?
I couldn't tell you.
You know, Bert and Seabell, John Bechtel, now Sin Quirin. And you would talk about just down-to-earth,
laid back
artists, laid back artists that are you would never guess in conversation that they play this up in your face music. That's probably one of the most aggressive form of rock and roll that, you know,
just get it out of their system. I don't know. Yeah. You did bring up something during the interview which you didn't quite get there, which I thought about asking, and then it left my mind, but kind of your Mount Rushmore of industrial artists, you know,
right.
Who would be the big 4? I mean, obviously you have to have Trent now. I know that we talk about
Absolutely.
That. And then probably the dude from, was it Jazz from Killing Joke?
Jazz Coleman, you know, Al Jorgensen, Jazz Coleman, Trent Reznor. And then, you know, the thing about Killing Joke, we could argue about this, and maybe we could have Sin come back on and talk about Killing Joke, because we've talked about Killing Joke before. Is that they're not. I mean, every album is different. They go to this, post-punk, progressive, middle '80s sound, and then they jump to a metalish sound. Then they go to maybe an industrial. It's just they're everywhere. But anyway, jazz could be up there, I guess, in certain ways. But like I said, Praga Khan and Oliver Adams of the Lords of Acid, and not a lot of people are fluent in Lords of Acid. Those guys were so influential. I just can't imagine not one of their two busts be on the Mount Rushmore of industrial metal. So I guess, we could go down the list of artists that could be up there. But, why not Bert and C. Bell be up there? Fear Factory is very influential.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of who else would... Like I've always kind of dabbled around the edges of industrial. I've never I'm kind of the popular guys, the 9 Inch Nails and Ministry a little bit here and there. So it's hard for me to really give you a good answer on my end, but I don't.
I don't know what your thoughts are on industrial rock, but I got into it in the latter part of the '80s. We've talked about this a lot. MTV 120 Minutes had a lot to do with that. 14th Avenue Co-op Records in Rock Island back in the day when they were still open, they had a lot to do with that. But the first time I heard actual Ministry, a Ministry song, when you're never exposed to industrial rock before, it scared the living shit out of me. It really did. It like the first time I heard Venom, when I was a little kid, it scared me. And the first time I heard Ministry, I think it was off of In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up or whatever, the live album or whatever. It's just something you never heard. So it's hard to process something like that when you've never heard it before.
Twisted Sister scared me.
That'll be scary too. So, but yeah, there you go. So yeah, industrial metal rock, like we discussed, it will always have that underground feel to it. It'll never have that populist type of gravitation. It'll always be lurking in the underground.
And I think that's the way they want it, if I'm being honest. I don't think they want to be Metallica or Guns N' Roses. I think they like being in the underground, and I don't know. We should really get to the interview because I'm wasting your time. It's a good interview, and not because of us, because of him. He's phenomenal. So,
phenomenal interview, yeah.
The tour starts November 21st.
Yep.
Go to, I'm assuming, Ministry. Look them up on Google. I don't have their website in front of me.
Well, you can go right to their Facebook page.
All right.
It's right
all
there.
The tour dates will be right there. Check them out on the road, and we'll have one of them back on, hopefully next year, to talk about the tour.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
All right, enjoy.
Good night. Hey, Sin, this is Eric Nesbitt with the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Hey, I want to introduce you to my co-host, Bob Zerl.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Hey, first of all, number one, I want to thank you so much for the correspondence this past week of getting everything together. So we are so excited to have you tonight on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I'm honored to be on it. And thanks for staying with me on all the reminders, because I tend to forget things.
Absolutely. Well, we had John Bechtel on about a month ago. We just released his episode, so he was a big supporter of getting you on the podcast. So we want to thank him a lot as well.
Oh, I'll make sure his check is in the mail. He's a good man. I love JB. I've known JB for 12 years now. We've been touring together and doing music together. So yeah, he's a good guy.
He is, absolutely. Well, to start us all off here, I know you have some exciting news, some tour information for us, so let's hear it.
Yeah, we Ministry tour kicks off November 21st, and it runs till December 21st, and we actually start rehearsals on Monday. So everyone's stress level will be through the roof starting Monday.
I guess, the patterns of touring, and this is a question I always ask all of our artists as far as, where you're at in your career right now, where Ministry is at in Al's and his career. Is this a preferential way of touring, do a month and then take time off, or, opposed to doing the, traditional, let's get in on the bus and go for months at a time? I guess where is everybody's mind at this time?
Well, that's a good question. In recent years, I've found it to be, more beneficial to us as far as our health goes and our mental well-being to kind of just do like a month or so at a time. If you had asked me that a few years ago, I would have said something completely different because I loved staying out on the road, for months and months and months at a time. But, the older that we get, it seems to work better for us this way. We go in for about a month and then we take a break. I personally, I do wish we would tour a little more often. But I like these kind of 1 month sort of runs. It seems to work out best for us right now.
Oh, very cool. I guess my curiosity kind of has the best of me when it comes to creating a set list, a Ministry set list to play live. Where is the band at as far as the catalog is huge as far as the amount of music that the band has. When you guys are selecting your set list, how much of old with new do you mix in these days?
Well, I'll tell you. I came into the Al Jorgensen fold in 2006, and I always suggested old material just because I'm an old school fan. I got into the band in the 80s, so I've always been the guy sort of bugging Al about doing older material and a bit more obscure stuff. Ultimately, it's always up to Al, to come up with the set list. But every now and then, he kind of he caves in and he lets us do some other sort of obscure stuff. Now, on this upcoming tour, I can tell you that we will be doing a lot more stuff off of Land of Rape and Honey. So we're all very excited about that.
Absolutely. How cool is that? That's such an iconic album, so you have to be excited.
Very much so. I mean that was, to me, that's one of the, it's in my top 10 records, all time. So very influential album for me and for the band. So I'm, very excited that we're throwing in quite a few Land of Rape and Honey songs on this upcoming run.
When you're rehearsing, are you just trying to, tighten everything up? Are you kind of relearning songs or learning some old songs? And is that kind of what you're...
We're trying to not kill each other. Yeah, it's more of just kind of tightening things up. We majority of the band has been together for a while now, so it's not like we're really learning stuff. It's more of tightening up. What tends to change sometimes is segues in between songs, intros, outros, stuff like that. And then it's just a matter of tightening everything up. Ministry is a pretty structured band in that sense. The material, is pretty. It's pretty tough on your right hand if you're a guitar player. So, it's more a matter of just tightening things up and not killing each other.
Is the set list kind of decided then, or are you guys able to just go into any song at any time?
No, I mean, we already know what the set list is for this upcoming tour, but what generally happens is we'll have an additional, usually 5 or 6 alternates that we kind of have ready in our back pocket, to just kind of throw in. And sometimes when you go on the road, you envision a set to work, and then sometimes certain songs just don't go over well live, and so you have to be ready to make changes. So that's why we keep about 5 or 6 alternates all ready to go.
I kind of want to switch gears on you here. Is like, you've been synonymous in the industrial metal rock world. Was that always your goal as an aspiring artist to gravitate to this genre of music, or did it just kind of happen organically?
I mean, it was always, the rock. I always throw everything kind of under the big rock umbrella. So yeah, that definitely was always the goal for me. I got into the quote unquote industrial thing, in the 80s. So it was definitely something that I was very, very in tune with. And Ministry, was one of the bands, one of the big, influential bands for me. So it was funny. I remember going to rehearsals back in the late 80s and, with my little, I think in the late 80s, I was in like thrash, metal bands or power metal bands or whatever. And, listening to, in case you didn't feel like showing up live, the cassette in my car. And I remember showing up to rehearsals and I'd just be like, guys, like, we got to do some shit like this, man. Like, this is insane, So to look back on that, it's still a bit surreal for me at times when I'm, at rehearsals or in the studio with Al. I'll be sitting, writing music with Al. And, there'll be times where he'll look over at me and he'll be like, well, what do you think we should do? Or, and I'm just like, what the fuck, man? I'm like, why are you asking me? Like, I'm just a kid, in my Trans Am listening to your cassette. Like, sometimes I still have to pinch myself, man. So, but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it was definitely always, a goal.
You talk about the rock umbrella and then the subgenres within it, and I'm always the guy that likes to look at it as the umbrella as well. But do you ever feel handcuffed by any, the industrial subgenre that you get categorized in a lot?
Not at all. I think because I've always done so many different things, with other bands and other projects, and like the music I listen to. It varies so much, I know that I'm most known for the Ministry thing, but I write I write trip hop stuff, I write trance stuff, traditional Spanish music, just anything you could think of. Like I'll usually get my hands on it, so I've never felt handcuffed to that. And I never wanted to be pigeonholed in that thing. It all falls to me under the rock thing, but I never wanted to be. The one thing that I definitely knew is I didn't want to be handcuffed or pigeonholed into one certain thing, and that's why I've always kept my my musical catalog, if you will, just completely all over the place.
You mentioned when you're writing in different styles, and do you have to be in a right frame of mind to write a certain way, or do you just kind of write and it comes out, trip hop or industrial, whatever? How does that work for you?
Generally, it just comes out. The way I write is, I write constantly, and I sort of write just in bulk, and then I sort of separate them and put them in their place later. Unless I'm writing, like, say, okay, it's time to write a Ministry record, then I'm writing that kind of stuff, if we have a deadline or if we're in the studio, I'll just focus on it, on making it sound like that. But when I'm not, under the gun writing an album or anything like that, and I'm just at home writing, anything could come out. I could come out with like a blues number or whatever. It's just, when inspiration hits, it just kind of flows out of you. And I just like to write it, record it, demo it, and then I can pick and choose later on as to where it'll go.
This kind of leads me to the next question, and I don't know if you saw this online or not, but Jonathan Davis of Korn was quoted in an interview by saying, "Nu metal is the last movement seen in the pop culture industry of rock and roll." of heavy metal. And do you believe in this comment? Yeah, it was kind of a bold statement, I kind of felt.
Well, I think you're taking it out of context. I heard the interview where he did it.
Yeah.
He was just saying they're like the last big rock stars is really what he was getting at.
Right, and it's a pop culture thing. Sin, what is your take on that?
I hadn't heard that, but I mean, maybe there might be a part of it that I might agree with him on that, and I think it would just be showing my age. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I was a kid in the 70s, and I saw like all the big over the top bands, and I've seen it just sort of die down, and I think maybe that's where he's coming from as far as sort of remembering the days of the big rock star bands and stuff like that, and I think maybe the new metal thing was sort of the last thing of that type of categorization of the big sort of rock band. So yeah, maybe. I mean, it's possible that I could possibly agree with that statement.
And you mentioned coming up in the 70s, and one of the things that I think is missing now is kind of the mystery behind your favorite rock band, and you're in a band that is kind of has that, but in the same breath, the social media does give you accessibility, which is kind of neat for the audience too. Where are you as a fan? Where would you rather be, the mystery or the accessibility?
The mystery. I agree with you 100% on that, on both counts actually. I miss the mystique and the mystery of back in the day. Back in the day, I remember, going to a fucking bookstore just to read an article on the band that I loved, and I couldn't wait for the record to come out, and just absorbing everything on the album sleeves and everything like that, and just it almost led to a very active and vivid imagination, and you kind of had to picture yourself, what the band was like, what they, if you hadn't seen them live, you were just kind of imagining what they were like live. And I don't know, I guess I do miss that. By the same token, I mean, I like the accessibility to a certain point, but I think you lose that mystique in a band. And again, I think I'm just showing my age with all that stuff. That's what, like, we all grew up, watching and listening to and wondering about. And I guess I miss those days. If I had to pick, between the two, I would go back to the old days.
Industrial metal has always kind of had that, I guess maybe underground movement within its popularity. It's kind of like a cult following. I guess maybe in your thoughts on all this, why hasn't industrial metal and rock have more of a populist pop culture movement to it, like nu metal or thrash metal? What is your thoughts on that?
I think that it just wasn't or isn't as commercially accepted as far as there's so many reasons on why that is, but I think it's not. When you talk about, Throbbing Gristle or bands like that, I mean, you're not going to hear that on the radio. You're not going to see that on videos. I think it's just a bit too far out there. So with nu metal, I think it was more commercially accepted because, you're talking about certain strong structures. You're talking about, verse, chorus, bridge. They kind of followed a lot of those commercial pop song structures. They were just heavier. I think that, with the true industrial stuff, I think it's just a little too out there for the masses to completely embrace it as like a commercial thing,
One of the cool things for me for bands like Ministry or the more underground type bands that can last forever but still have this hardcore audience is the fact that they've built up that hardcore audience when a lot of the bigger bands will have a casual audience, but you guys are going to get attendance no matter where you go, and is that, I guess my question is, coming up, did you have the aspirations to be like a Metallica, or were you always just wanting to play music and not really caring about the success part in terms of popularity part of it?
Yeah, it was, I wanted to be in Kiss. And that was my dream as when I was 6 years old. The first time I heard Kiss, that was what did it for me. But clearly, I knew I wasn't going to be in Kiss. But from that point on, it was just like, I just want to do music. I didn't really care. I didn't do it to be a big famous rock star. The most important thing for me has always been and will always be the music, the love for music. So everything that's happened, in my career, I feel completely blessed that I've been this lucky. I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to tour. I wanted to, make records. I wanted to be on video, on MTV and all that stuff. And I've gotten to do all those things. So I feel like I made it. I reached all the goals that I set out to do. Did I ever reach Metallica level? No, but I am totally cool with where I'm at, because ultimately, take all that stuff away, I'm still going to be doing music, and I still love music. So, it was always about, just making music.
You've been involved with so many things outside of ministry, within working in movie soundtrack and what have you. I guess, is that, kind of like the key nowadays for artists to keep their creative juices flowing, to give your, maybe put all your fingers as many pots as you possibly can for that creativity outlet? Or how does that work now with artists? Because, album sales are not what they were.
No, that's very true. For me, it's just always been a writing thing, and that I'm just constantly writing. So if you're always writing, you're always looking, for somewhere to, kind of put your music or place it somewhere. But for other guys, I don't know, they might do it because they're trying to make up for or compensate for, album sales that aren't there anymore. For me, honestly, it's just, I just love writing, and it just flows out of me. So I enjoy doing it. If somebody approaches me that, they need something for a soundtrack, great. I've got this. If another artist, comes up to me that wants me to guest on their record, they want me to write something for them, great, let's do it. So for me, it's just like, I just need that outlet to constantly be there,
Has it always been that way? And the way reason I'm asking is, there's a lot of artists who, that you want to be that way, but at some point you have to make a living doing it as well. Otherwise, that's why a lot of people quit and don't last. Right. What point did you kind of feel, did you have to not really work? I'm trying to think of how to word this. At what point did that really take off and you feel comfortable just focusing on the music and not having to worry about the business end of things?
For me, it happened with I was in a band called Society One, and that was the band that we first got a record deal, with, and this is back when, Headbangers Ball was still around on MTV, and VH1 was playing videos. So at that point for me is when I was like, okay, this, I really don't have to do anything else. This is just what I can do. So that was the point for me, many, many years ago.
How liberating is it to not have to chase popularity as opposed to, just...
Oh, it's amazing.
Artistic.
It's the best thing in the world, man. To just be able to focus on that and to just do, what you love to do. It is the most liberating, freeing feeling in the world.
I guess this kind of leads in. This is a perfect segue to the next question. You in ministry and Society One and all the other things that you've worked with, you've been on multiple different labels, and labels have changed over the years as far as how much creative interference they have with the artists, opposed to now. I guess, can you kind of reflect on, your early times working with different labels until now? What is the creativity process for you now opposed to, 20 years ago?
I got to say I've been lucky in that sense with labels that even with when we had the first record deal, we didn't really have a lot of label interference as far as creatively. We had a lot of interference with other bullshit with labels, but creatively, we pretty much were able to do whatever we wanted. I know other guys, and even other guys in this band that have had, horrible experiences with their record labels. And I've just heard horror stories, but I guess, I don't have that much experience with that because it was always pretty good for me because they just never, butted in with the creative process.
You hear about, we've had different artists on the show over the last few years. They're signed, they're not signed. Some of them say, we don't really need a label, any longer. I guess how crucial are labels to the rock and roll scene now? With the way sales and everything, the whole culture is now. What is your take on that?
I definitely don't think they're as crucial as they used to be. As much as I hate the internet, it's helped in a certain way. Nowadays a lot of do-it-yourself, artists are out there making a living with no label. And that was unheard of back in the day. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, everyone was chasing that label. Now that's not the case. So in that sense, it's great. I'm happy that people are able to make a living, without having that big record label thing just hovering over your head. So that's been pretty cool. Pros and cons to the internet, that's a whole different thing. And again, I keep showing my age with everything that I say, but it's amazing to think, man, that not that long ago, I mean, I was out in Hollywood passing out flyers as a way to advertise, and now, I mean, there's a guy in his bedroom, putting stuff online, and he has fans all over the world. Right. So it's a pretty amazing thing,
They just left me.
Okay, well, this is good because this will give me another good question to ask you. Well, I think it's a good question. I asked this to various artists. Bob hates the term of scene, but I just think that scene is the different scenes over the years. The Sunset Strip, the scene, the New York City hardcore scene. Scenes are not what they were. Do you ever foresee another hot spot for rock and roll to spawn somewhere where artists will gravitate to? And I'm not talking about Nashville, but other spots, maybe not necessarily in the United States, but somewhere else where rock and roll acts will gravitate to play live again and have it as a popular culture thing to do.
Man, that's a very good question. I honestly, I don't know. I hope so. I caught the tail end of that LA Hollywood, Sunset strip scene. And that was sort of the last thing that I was, around for. Touring all over the world like we do, I haven't seen anything or any place that where I've gone, wow, there's something brewing here. Not to say that there isn't, but I just haven't seen it. And I don't know, man. I hope that someplace, wherever it is, can spawn some other sort of hotbed of music, of live music, But I honestly don't know, man.
And I don't hate the word scene. It's just more of the
he doesn't like it.
The internet has gotten rid of the fact, you don't need to be in a city to, like you were saying earlier, you'll have fans all over the world just by releasing stuff online.
Yep. That's true.
Speaking of all over the world, some bands their fans differ from country to country. With a band like Ministry, are your fans kind of the same everywhere, or How do they different in different regions?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, we seem to have more insanity in South America. But I think that might just be, every band. I don't know. The fans just go ballistic down there. And with the first time we toured Russia a few years ago, we had fans waiting at the airport, at the train station, at our hotel, which that doesn't really happen to us. And so that was kind of a new, different thing. We were leaving the venue, and like fans are like jumping and climbing like on the hood of the bus and stuff. Like, it was crazy, man. They're like pounding on the windows. It's like we were the fucking Beatles or something, man. So fucking, I mean, it was cool, but it was like, man, we're so not used to this. Cause in the States, I mean, I got to say everyone's a little bit more, blasé about things and just like, whatever, Europe seems to be a little more, they'll stick with you for years, and they're very loyal. And those fans, whether doesn't matter if they necessarily like your new record or not, they will be there. The States seem to be a little bit more fickle, I think. And then South America is just fucking nuts. It's just awesome. I mean, as a band, you want that energy from the crowd and shit. I remember being down in Chile and us fucking running like down the corridor to get into the venue because we were being chased by fans. And I mean, it was like the fucking Hard Day's Night from the Beatles, man. It was fucking bizarre, man. But very cool.
I know when we had Burton C. Bell on, he was talking about kind of the same thoughts that you were expressing. Bob, where did he say that Fear Factory just could not grab? They didn't have it. Was it Japan or something like that? I don't know where it was. I thought maybe he was. Does Ministry have a strong following in the Asian continents, in Japan and what have you?
Yes,
you do.
Yeah, I wasn't in the band the last time Ministry played Japan, but from what I understand, there's a huge following in Japan, and we get offers for Japan all the time. But for some reason, Al is not a fan. I guess he had a bad experience. With Al being Al. And so he's not a fan of Japan, but I know that the band does well there.
And I could be misquoting the country. I don't remember what Burton said, but there was a certain place where he said, man, Fear Factory just does not do well. And I don't remember where it was.
I feel like it was South America.
Was it South America? I can't remember, so maybe I'm totally wrong. But anyway, now on to the next question. Okay, so this is kind of a little bit of a different question. So, 2014, you were working in Super Maniac. I guess, I haven't heard a whole lot about the band since 2014. Is it still going? Are you still working on it?
No, Super Maniac was just a side, I had a little bit of time, and I had connected with the singer, Charles he's a very busy producer now. He's a producer over at Epitaph Records, and it was just a side thing that we did. We were gonna, release a few singles, but we didn't even get enough time to do that. So that was really the only thing that was going on with Super Maniac.
Gotcha. And sorry if I pronounced it Super Maniac. That's my list of questions. So
again, and it was, it was just another one of those things where, I have songs, what am I going to do with them? And it's just one of those outlets for me.
Exactly. Okay, so I got a big curveball question for you here. Okay, so
I am straight.
All right, so
contrary to what JB and Burton might have said.
I hang out at the local. We actually still have a couple local record stores here where we live, and we always get into debate and discussion whenever I go over to whatever record store I choose to go to, and they always ask who's going to be on your podcast, and I say, hey, Sin Quirin is going to be coming on our podcast this week. So the conversation kind of went into obviously industrial rock and what have you, and I know that you've worked with Praga Khan and Oliver Adams of the Lords of Acid. And so we got in this deep discussion about the forefathers of the godfathers of industrial rock. These guys are it's Trent Reznor and Al Jorgensen, and they're just repeating themselves. And I got into the Lords of Acid when I was in my undergrad years, and
Nice.
this is back in the early middle '90s. Anyway, I guess maybe what I was trying to my point is trying to get at is I was trying to explain to these gentlemen that, hey, these two guys, Oliver Adams and Praga Khan, these guys you have to mention these guys when it comes to influential industrial artists. And they just wouldn't say, because they're like, this is Lords of Acid, it's dance, synth pop, it's not real true industrial, rock, metal, whatever. And this is where we had this back and forth conversation. So my question to you is that, do you kind of feel the same way I do about, Praga Khan and Oliver Adams when it comes to their influence in the genre of industrial rock and roll?
Absolutely, 1,000%. I love Praga. I actually just spoke to him last week because I toured with Lords in 2010, and I played guitar on that 2010 Lords of Acid tour. Actually, funny story with that is because I'm a huge Lords of Acid fan from way back as well. Mm-hmm. And when I first saw Lords was back in the 90s during the it was like the Sextasy, Sex Dream Ball, one of those sex type of tours. Mm-hmm. And it was Lords of Acid with the Thrill Kill Cult opening. And in 2010, when I came in to play guitar for Lords of Acid, the way that happened is the booking agent that I had at the time knew Maurice Praga, and said, hey, I know this guitar player, he plays in Ministry, blah, blah, blah. So Praga reached out to me, said, hey, would you like to play guitar? So I said, fuck yeah, of course. So on the 2010 tour, we went out with the Thrill Kill Cult opening for us as well. Cool. So it was really fucking bizarre, man, because here I am now in Lords, with the Thrill Kill Cult opening, and I'm just like, I kept having flashbacks every night of when I saw them, like at the Palladium in the 90s, as a fan, watching this thing, and now here I was playing guitar for them. So, but yeah, to answer your question, I agree with you 1,000%. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I guess, that to add on to that question is, why do you think it is, as far as, those two gentlemen in Lords of Acid, they don't get the kind of kudos that Al or Trent get when it comes to maybe a popular type of. Why didn't they get the accreditation that these two other gentlemen get? Because they're very influential artists, and was it because it was always something about like a sex this or sex that? It was always very sexual. Is that you think maybe that why?
I think that might have had something to do with it. I just think, I don't think they put out enough material or as much material, as frequently as Al or Trent. And I think, Lords, Praga, and Oliver, they always had that real sex bondage fetish thing kind of going on, and I think that might have been a bit too much for the masses, so I think that's probably why they just never get as much recognition as these guys.
Speaking of the masses, it seems like we're in this PC culture that's really getting out of hand. Does that affect you guys as writers and creators, or does that just kind of
not
light
the
fire under you that much more?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we're the kind of band, if you know anything about Al, where, as if you say, oh, dude, you shouldn't say this, he's going to say it 1,000 times, He's going
to name the record that.
So, yeah, if anything, it just kind of adds fuel to the fire for us.
Oh, very cool. Well, we're coming down to our allotted time. First of all, I want to thank you so much for once again participating in the correspondence and everything. What we're going to do is, since the tour is coming upon us really quickly here, we're going to release this interview within the next 2 weeks. Is that right?
About a week and a half.
About a week and a half.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so before we let you go, is there anything else that you would like to promote or plug?
Yeah, I just released I have a side metal project called Three-Headed Snake, and I've released an EP, and it's on Bandcamp, and I think we sold out of our we have a 3-song EP that we sold out of. We have a digital download that's still available, but the band it's a very throwback classic metal, kind of project, very Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Dio kind of stuff, and it was just something that I wanted to do for fun. But I got Cesar Soto from Ministry, Derek Abrams from Ministry, my old bass player D.V. Karloff from Society One, and Johnny Ray on vocals. And it is not like Ministry at all. So like anybody listening that checks it out, it is not like Ministry at all. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like a Queensryche on steroids kind of thing. Johnny's an amazing vocalist, but it's not industrial at all. But that's the last project that I just released a couple weeks ago. And if anyone's interested, they could go to Three-Headed Snake on our Bandcamp page, and you can find us on social media and all that stuff.
Okay, so here's the deal. After the tour, at the sometime in January, we were supposed to get Tony Campos to come on to kind of recap the tour after it's over with, but my communication by email with him is kind of hit and miss.
Good luck.
It's very miss.
I've known Tony for 25 years. Good luck.
It's been kind of that way. So here's
Tony is not. I love him. I love him to death. Tony is not the most on top of his email game person.
Very good. Well, here's the thing then. If it would fall through and we couldn't get him on the show, can I get a hold of you then after the tour and say...
What do you mean if?
Okay, yeah. When I don't get a hold of him, can I get a hold of you so you can give us a tour recap?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. At that point, I can give you, arrest details. I can give you, all kinds of shenanigan details. Absolutely.
Well, fantastic. So Bob will have this all edited and ready to go sometime end of next week, something like that.
Right.
And then when it's available, I'll send you the link, and then
perfect.
Please share it wherever you can. We're going to share it wherever we can, and we'll go from there. How about that?
Absolutely will. I'll put it on all the social media stuff. And we're in town. We start rehearsals Monday the 12th, and I believe that we leave on the 20th. And then the first show is the 21st. So as soon as you have it, just send it over, and I will gladly share it. And once again, thank you guys very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thanks also to JB and to Burton. I love those guys, and to you guys for having taking the time to listen to my gibberish.
You were fantastic. We appreciate it, and I'll be in touch in about 2 weeks. How about that?
Awesome.
All right, take care. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Right.
I'll be kicking around my weight in steel. I'll be broadcasting the underdeal. When the black is rough and the sky is choppy, no power in the verse can stop me.